Okay, what we're going to take a look at now is really centralizing the errors, or how we're dealing with the errors in a central location. And one of the cool things that Angular comes with is an interceptor. And what an interceptor does is it intercepts our HTTP requests either on the way out or on the way back. And when the request is on its way back from the API server, we can intercept it and we can check to see if there's any errors with our HTTP requests. And an error is something that's not in the 200 range of HTTP status code responses. So all of these are definitely errors. And we can catch them in our interceptor, and then we can do something with our user interface to notify the user something has happened without needing to do this in every single component that we create. So let's head back to VS Code to set this up. Now, an interceptor is something else that we can create with the Angular CLI, and let's just double check what we need to do for that. So I'm just going to say ngg and -- help and take a look at the different things and objects we can create with Angular. And one of the things we can create is the interceptor. And this one does not have an alias, so we need to say ngg interceptor rather than just I. Okay, so let's do this. And I'm going to say ngg interceptor. And I'm going to create it in a folder called interceptors, as we'll have more than one of these because they are useful. But I'm going to call this one error. And I'm just going to do a quick dry run to see if it comes with tests, and it does. So I'm going to swap dry run for skip-tests and press return. And now we have our new shiny interceptor. So inside the file and folder explorer, inside interceptors, we now have this error.interceptor.ts. Like most things that are not components in Angular just now, this used to be a class, but now it is a function. But that's fine, it works the same way. So we'll inject a couple of things into here. We're going to need two things. We're going to need our router. So I'm going to say const router equals inject, and we'll add the router into this. And we're also going to add our toaster into this as well, and we're going to inject the toaster service. And we're going to take a look at what we're returning from this. So when we return next, this is an observable, and it's an HTTP event of an unknown type. And we can do something before the next thing happens, or we can do something afterwards. And in the case of doing something afterwards, because this is an observable, we need to use the pipe function again, because this isn't a normal error, it's an observable error. So we need to do something inside this pipe. And what we use from RxJS is the catch error, and then we can get hold of the error, and then we can do something with it. So I'm going to say error at the arrow function, and then we can check for the presence of the error. And if we do have the error, then depending on what kind of error it is, we'll take a different action. So we're going to do this inside a switch statement, and we do have a little snippet here inside VS Code, so I'm going to make use of that. And we're going to switch depending on the error.status. And in the case of a 400, then we have a few different options for this one. Because if we take a look at Postman, we've got our validation error. This is a 400 bad request, and we've got our errors inside an errors object or an errors array. And for our bad request, this is also a 400 bad request, and this just gives us our error as a string of text. So we need to do something different depending on which kind of 400 error it is. So we're going to check to see if we have an error .error.errors, because the error is the HTTP error, which contains an error object, which is this one, and our error object contains an errors array if it's a validation error. So we're going to check for the presence of that, And then we're going to create effectively an array to store these different errors in, because we need to format them into a flattened array that's easy for our code to work with. So I'm going to say const model state errors. And validation errors are referred to as model state errors in our API. So that's the reason for naming it that way. And then I need to loop over what's inside the errors. So I'm going to say for, and I'm going to say const key in error.error.errors. Because if we go back to our validation error response again, we've got our errors here, but each of these is effectively a key. And we've got a key of password and a key of username. So we need to loop over these, and then for each validation error inside here, I effectively want to push this into our model state errors. So let's do that. And I'm going to check to see, and we're overusing the word error inside here a little bit, but it is what it is. So I'm going to say if error.error.errors, and then in square brackets key, then we're going to say model state errors.push, and we're going to say error.error.errors, and in square brackets key. And below the model state errors, we're going to throw the model state errors, and then we're going to use the flat function to flatten this into a single array. So that takes care of the validation. And below this if statement, so do make sure the curly brackets are lined up, we're going to say else, and this is just going to be a normal bad request, so we're going to use toaster.error, and we're going to say error.error, as that is where our message is going to be, and we'll say error.status so that we display the message and the status code there as well. And then we break. So the next case is going to be the 401, and all we'll do for this one is say toaster.error, and we'll specify unauthorized as a string of text, because I don't think we get an actual error message for this one, and we'll say error.status, and below this we'll say break. And then we'll add a case for a 404. And if we do have a 404, we're going to route them to a not found page. So I'm going to say router and navigate by URL and say in quotes /not-found. And we don't have this yet, but we will create it soon. And then break. And in the case of a 500 error, then we're going to use a feature of the router that allows us to pass states along with our navigation, and we want to get the details of the error and then pass them to a component that we haven't created yet, but this is referred to as navigation extras. So I'm going to say const navigation extras, and this is going to be a type of navigation extras equals, and we specify states what we're going to pass to this. And we're going to pass the error, and this is going to be the error.error. And then we can say router and navigate by URL and say in quotes /server-error. And as a second parameter, that's where we can pass extras. And we're going to pass the navigation extras to our server error component. And we'll see how to use this soon. And we then need to break out of this. And for the default, well, it's not one of these types of errors, so something else has gone wrong that we're not accounted for. So we'll just add a toast and say toast error, and we'll just say something unexpected went wrong. And at that point, we're investigating our Chrome developer tools, our network request, to see what it is that we got caught out by that we weren't expecting coming back from our API. Now we've still got an error in our error interceptor, and that's because we need to eventually throw the error from this component as well. So I'll scroll down to below, and this is where bracket colorization comes in handy because we need to be below the if statement here. So below the if statement with the purple curly brackets in my case, I need to be below this one, and we're going to throw the error. And we should be good. Everything looks good inside here now. So no errors in our interceptor. Now we need to use our error interceptor, and the way that we do that in the new standalone Angular world is we go to our app config, and where we've got our provide HTTP client, we need inside the parameters here to say with interceptors, and open parentheses, and we pass an array of effectively HTTP interceptor functions, and we've just created one of those, so we're going to pass in here our error interceptor. So let's take a look and see if that has had the desired effect. So I'll just refresh the page, make sure everything is clean, and it is. And if I test a 400 error, then we see the toast, and this is coming from our interceptor. Marvelous. And if I test a 401 error, then we get 401 unauthorized. If I test a 404 error, then we're going to be redirected to not found, but we don't have a component for that yet. That's fine. If I test a 500 error, same thing, we get redirected to server error. Again, we don't have that component yet, so that's fine. And then we've got our 400 validation error. And if we take a look at the console here, then we can see that what we've got is a flattened array of validation errors. And that makes it easy to work with, and we'll take a look at what we're going to do with validation errors next.